Let us attend now Scripture, book of Exodus from the 3rd chapter. Moses was keeping the flock of his father Jethro, the priest of Midian. He led his flock beyond the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of God. There the angel of the Lord appeared to him in a flame of fire out of a bush. He looked, and the bush was blazing, yet it was not consumed. And then Moses said, I must turn aside and look at this great sight and see why the bush is not burned up. When the Lord saw that he had turned aside to see, God called to him out of the bush, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. And then he said, Come no closer. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. He said further, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at God. This is the word of our Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Things had really not worked out so well for Moses. Adopted family connections to the royal palace only get you so far in life. Despite all of our popular imaginations, he did not grow up in competition with Yul Brynner and flirting with Ann Baxter. He had problems with anger management, as far as we can tell. He waits till nobody's around, nobody's looking, and that's when he murders an Egyptian. And we'd like to think that this would earn him some points, freedom fighter points with the other Hebrews, but they're all just afraid of him because they don't know what this guy's going to do. So on the run from the law, rejected by his own people, he flees, trying to find some little quiet corner to lay low outside the attention of New Kingdom Egypt. He wanders over to a God-forsaken corner of scrubby little deserts and God-haunted landscapes we call Midian. It's out where the Negev bumps into the Hijaz. And there he settles down with a local girl. And that's where the story should end. Moses has reached the end of the line. Standing all day in the back end of nowhere, watching the back end of sheep. And they're not even his sheep. Moses is stuck in middle management. The sheep belong to his father-in-law, Jethro. Jethro appears to have given him a job just to keep his daughter happy. I've been to Midian, out where Jordan, Israel, and Saudi Arabia now converge, and it's a nice place if you like rocks, but there's not a lot out there. You can imagine Moses' grief and his frustration. Once upon a time, he had prospects. He had opportunities, right? Once upon a time, he had connections in the big city, even at the royal palace itself. He had opportunities in Thebes, but Midian? There's nothing in Midian. Midian is not his home. And shepherd is definitely not his career choice. Once he could have been somebody, but now he spends each day, every day, week after week, year after year, watching after a bunch of stinky sheep. And they're not even his sheep. If you're frustrated enough, and if you don't have a lot to lose, well, then you can do all kinds of stupid stuff. So Moses goes off the grid. Exodus says he went beyond beyond the wilderness. He goes across the Negev desert. He goes where you should go with sheep. He crosses over into the mountainous labyrinth of Sinai. Sinai is not a good place for sheep or for shepherds. We don't even take tour groups there nowadays. It's way too dangerous. But somewhere out there, those craggy hills, between the crevasses and the scorpions and the sinkholes, something happens. Moses turns aside and he sees that famous bush, the one that burned but didn't burn up. Notably, Exodus says Moses turned aside, leaving behind his sheep, his charges, leaving them to their own devices for a little while, to go and find out what this thing was. And of course, in the process, he discovers not what so much as a who, with a grammatically tortured name that my lips are not worthy to utter. In our normal church talk, we tend to divide all sort of big turning points, moments of change, into God moments, moments when God chooses us in some way, when God intervenes and changes us in some way, or on the other hand, to faith moments, moments when we choose God. But that's not what happens here. Moses had no faith at all. He doesn't appear to have any idea who this flammable shrubbery deity might be. As a matter of fact, it later requires a rather lengthy historical introduction when they finally get around to it. Moses is ethnically a Hebrew, but he's not a Jew. He's not practicing. He's probably not even a monotheist. He's an Egyptian. And similarly, that shrub, it's not calling out, hey, shepherd guy, check it out. The shrub is silent. Who knows for how many generations that bush had been burning? Hashem appears to be patiently content burning away under the Sinai sun. Waiting for somebody to take a moment to pay attention. Salvation history turns. There's a pivot here. And it doesn't turn on revelation or faith, but something altogether more mundane. A little curiosity. Moses doesn't really care that much about anything anymore. But he sees this weird shrub, and that snags his curiosity, his imagination. And so he deviates from his plan to go and discover. And from that curiosity, everything else will follow. A new relationship, a covenant, a new people will be formed, a new land, a new story, and in due time, new life. And it all starts with just a little bit of curiosity. It's the easiest thing in the world to get stuck in Midian, to fall into that very comfortable trap of contented middle management, watching somebody else's sheep. And we drift there by default. It doesn't require us to examine our lives, the lives of our community. It doesn't require us to make choices. It's predictable, it's reassuring, it's comforting. You don't need to change. You just need to get by. And if something really goes wrong, well, there's somebody else's sheep after all, right? My greatest privilege while serving the past year as moderator was working with the transition visioning team. read, we studied, and we learned. We met Presbytery folks from all over the country, and we studied dozens of church renewal proposals, hundreds of mission statements. And somewhere along the way it dawned on me. I knew where we were. We're in Midian. Let's be honest, we're in a wilderness. We're in a wilderness, and not a whole lot grows here, at least at the moment. Our denomination no longer occupies a privileged social position, as it once did. There are vastly fewer of us by number. Every single year, the PCUSA declines by 5% every year. And that means we shrink by half every 14 years. We're the third fastest shrinking denomination in the United States, among mainline denominations. Thank you very much, Disciples of Christ in the UCC. Our own Presbytery either dismisses or closes one or two congregations each year, every year, and has done so for the past decade. Tonight we closed our first congregation of 2017. And our presbytery is slowly but relentlessly evolving into a not-for-profit real estate holding company. And I'm not being facetious. 1/3 of our member congregations in our presbytery have essentially opted out. Opted out of covenant, opted out of participating in our covenantal life together. They don't send people to meetings or to committees. They don't share money. They don't share anything. And as you all well know, our congregations are facing increasing financial stress. If you have fewer than 100 people in worship, you're probably having a hard time paying for full-time staff. 2 weeks ago, the Washington Post published a rather startling headline, quote, "If it does not stem its decline, mainline Protestantism has just 23 Easters left." Period, close quote. And if we're honest with ourselves, we know we're in a mess. This is not how things were supposed to go. We're stuck in a slow decay. We're stuck in Midian. And my question is, why? Few seem particularly interested in the questions. We're not always a curious bunch. Members are supposed to die, not congregations. So, why? Jesus said, "The gates of hell shall not prevail against his church." So, did Jesus lie? Or is something else going on? And I once thought that wise leaders somewhere up in the celestial hierarchy of the General Assembly would have the wise answers. But everybody just seems to avoid the hard questions. The General Assembly doesn't appear to be emotionally able to handle the difficult questions about why we are declining and what can be done about it. So in order to avoid the really hard question, the difficult question, it instead chooses to face an impossible question: how to solve racism in America as one denomination. And our synod's not particularly interested in addressing the hard questions about what's happening to us as a church, as a denomination. They've decided instead to focus on the impossible question about how to make peace in the Middle East. Good luck with that. And the beautiful thing about committing yourself to an impossible question instead of a really hard question is that it lets you off the hook. And allows you to celebrate a noble failure. Closer to home, in many of our congregations, maybe most, we would vastly prefer the pain of death and grief to the pain of change. Yeah. Why? As most pastors can testify to, most of us and most of our churches spend most of our time and our money and our energy caring for the people who are already there, our members, rather than sharing Jesus' invitation. And then we wring our hands wondering why we're shrinking and getting older each and every year. So, why? Why do we come to this collective self-deception? We all know it's there. Why do we abandon accountability and purpose and goals and mission and instead focus so much of our efforts on institutional hospice care? We are stuck in the wilderness, where things are slowly dying all around us. There's not enough food or enough water to sustain us or our flocks. No one is coming out from the cities to join us there anymore. And sometimes, in order to save your community, what you really need is not a new and renewed sense of hope. Sometimes what you really need is a U-Haul. You see, Sinai is not that far from Midian. You can see the mountains of Sinai from Midian. It's right over on the horizon. It just lies across a little strip of desert. It will be a little unfamiliar. Yes, that's true. But not too unfamiliar. All it requires is a little bit of curiosity to go and to see what this God is up to. All it's going to require of us is to step out of our self-contented ecclesial ghettos to see what the Spirit is up to, kindling life and hope in Christ's church. I mean, don't forget that the Church of Jesus Christ as a whole is alive and well. It's growing by leaps and bounds. The Spirit is quite active in the world today. There are now about 3.3 billion Christians in the world. We are living in the greatest evangelical age ever. We, mainline denominations, we are the ones who are dying, not Christ's church. So, why? Do we go out and learn from vital communities, or do we judge them? Do we embrace the ways that the Spirit is working outside, around, and sometimes despite denominations and congregations? Or do we double down on worshiping moribund institutions? Are we willing to change our ways to adapt to what the Spirit's actually doing, or would we rather wallow in nostalgia? Are we willing to risk the pain of change, or do we hunker down in the desert, waiting to die, contenting ourselves with a proud failure? Why is this congregation, Bath, little congregation, thriving? What happens here that's different from what's happening elsewhere? And why can't we ask any of these questions honestly of each other and in our church? Because if you can't ask them in church, where can you ask them? The way out of the wilderness takes just a little bit of curiosity and a slight preference for the pain of change over the pain of slow death. It's not easy, but it's also not impossible. It's going to hurt either way a little bit. And for us in each of our congregations, it is a choice. The Church of Jesus Christ has endured persecutions from the most powerful empire that the world ever knew, the complete collapse of civilization plagues that killed half of the population, multiple barbarian invasions, innumerable wars, heresies, schisms, uncountable conflicts. Do we actually believe that the church, which has endured all of that, cannot handle Sunday morning soccer practice? Or the disappearance of the blue laws?
That's right.
There is a future out there. There is life out there. The Spirit's out there begging us to come and play. But it's going to require a little curiosity. We need to be willing to venture out into some unfamiliar territory. We will need to privilege courage and accountability over contentment. And we'll need to walk with our eyes wide open and learn as we go, because our old answers and our old assumptions, they don't work anymore. We've been here before. We found our way out of Midian before. Our tradition started with John Calvin organizing a civic theocracy in Geneva as a boot camp for social and religious revolutionaries. We can do that. It's part of our DNA. It's who we are deep down. Because that bush, it's still burning. The light shines in the darkness. The darkness has never overcome it. So let's go find it together. All it's going to take is a little curiosity.
Thanks be to God. Amen.